Created live on Fireside.
It really is a big bun.
It's a very big bun.
Big fluffy bun.
It's a very big fluffy bun.
Where's the beef?
Some hamburger places give you a lot less beef on a lot of bun.
Where's the beef?
At Wendy's, we serve a hamburger we modestly call a single. And Wendy's single has more beef than the Whopper or Big Mac. At Wendy's, you get more beef and less bun.
Hey, where's the beef? I don't think there's anybody back there.
You want something better. You're Wendy's kind of people.
You're listening to Where's the Beef? I'm your host, Wendy Cooper, and this is where we talk advertising, marketing, technology, and culture. Today, I have a very special guest who I have known actually virtually or digitally. I have no idea how you say it, for a couple of years now. And it's interesting because I have not had a creative person actually on the show. I've had founders and CMOs and other founders and marketing people, but not really creative director. And Arthur Vibert is my guest today, and I am so thrilled to have him. His resume, reads like the one I wish I had. He is a creative director, a creative coach. He's an amazing writer, and he actually, get a load of this, created the Max Headroom campaign for Coke. The original launch campaign for Saturn cars. He worked for Levi's, BMW, Apple, Mozilla, Salesforce, and more. So without further ado, I want to welcome Arthur Vibert to Where's the Beef?
Hey, Wendy, it's a real pleasure to be here and great to talk to you again.
Thanks, Arthur. So we were, everyone here on Fireside kind of knows that we kind of congregate in the creator's room prior to our shows because we want to fill our guest in on kind of the fun things that happen here on Fireside as a guest. And it came to mind because I decided I was going to play the commercial in this episode because I had someone say to me just yesterday, I finally got it. I finally got what that title of your show meant. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So I want to ask you, Arthur, I'm going to just ask you point blank. When you saw this new show I was doing, did you get it or am I off my rocker for being a little too creative?
Not at all. I got it immediately. And, it's interesting, though, because that commercial does go back a bit.
It's 50 years ago, 1984, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
You can imagine being called Wendy
right.
during that time, right? You know what I went through, right?
Exactly. But it was funny because they were actually, the presidential candidate was using that phrase, where's the beef? When it was Reagan, and I'm trying to remember who the Democrat it was, but spacing it right now. But he kept saying to Reagan, where's the beef? But of course, that didn't help him. He didn't win. It was definitely a big phrase at the time. And I remember that campaign because it was Joe Settlemeyer was the director of those commercials. And he was in his heyday then. And that was definitely a standout. Very funny.
Can you explain to people what does it actually mean to be a creative director?
Sure. So creative director is kind of certainly in advertising and various other creative occupations. Obviously, there's some form of hierarchy because we're humans and that's how we function. And creative director is typically largely a management position because you are managing other creatives, but it requires a certain background not just a complete background in creative, either art direction in my case or writing as it may be. And, you need to, first of all, understand how creative people work and think, because it's not the same as people who don't work in creative occupations. And, you also need to be able to kind of form a bridge between the creative department and the business side of, in my case, advertising, and also be able to actually talk to clients in a way that they can understand and communicate the creative concepts to them in a way that makes sense. Because creative people are really good at coming up with ideas and less good at selling them. It's very challenging because, when you're a creative person and you come up with an idea, a lot of times it's like, well, it should speak for itself. I mean, isn't it obvious how brilliant this is? And yet it's
Right.
not always that obvious to people who haven't been immersed in it the whole time. So you got to learn that.
The definition of a creative is interesting because I don't even think we started calling ourselves creatives until a few years ago, as opposed to, I never called myself a creative. I just didn't. And I do now, but it's just a new vernacular that I think they use. I mean, don't you? Do you always call yourself a creative?
Honestly, I don't remember. I remember that
I don't think
the
so.
account side called us the creatives, and it used to kind of annoy me because it always felt like, well, there's the creatives, they're in their playpen right now, and some of them are pitching fits and some of them are behaving like children, and it's like, well, kind of, yeah, there is that. There's a infantilization of creative people that happens in business environments because a lot of times business people just don't understand creative people and how they work. So a lot of the behavior seems childish, and honestly, it is, but it's not without design. Because it turns out that the qualities that are required by somebody with a good creative mind are oftentimes the kind of qualities you find in young children. That sense of curiosity, a sense of wonder, the ability to say whatever is on your mind without editing it, which sometimes is really interesting and sometimes feels really obnoxious. So sometimes it can feel like you're dealing with children. But the truth of the matter is that in order to be able to think creatively, you need to free yourself of a lot of the sort of cultural restrictions that most people use to behave by. So, it can make creative people feel like they're, not the same as others. And so it's very easy to kind of get separated out into a different department where you really feel remote from everyone else. And unfortunately, what that can do is it engenders a sense of competition or even anger between the creative people and the business side of things, which is really unfortunate because, obviously when people team up, it's much more productive.
It's hard to explain to people, but I never was really in the ad agency space because I was kind of the agency,
Yeah.
So I didn't understand that mentality, right, of the advertising agency and all of the stuff that goes on, the egos, and it kind of, I want to use the word discrimination, like putting people in different boxes. And to me, sometimes it wasn't based on really the talent that you brought, or you had to just deal with these egos that interrupted the creative process. I mean, this is how I see it. You talk about flow, how there's this creative flow and how all creatives get stuck. Because I've talked to you several times about finding that path. You were originally on the Wendy Cooper show, Conversations with Remarkable People Over 50. And we had this lengthy conversation and other conversations about ageism in the creative space. I want to talk a little bit about why tech doesn't honor creative, because creative can actually really help them succeed. And where does that come from? Because for me, that's where's the beef? It's like, there's been this problem for so long, so why can't we solve it already? Because everyone will just prosper. And then the age thing, right? Young tech startups do not come in and hire anyone of age in any capacity, let alone creative. And the slew of creatives that are so talented, have worked and developed the biggest brands out there, are saying, okay, now what?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff to unpack there. First of all, on the issue of ego, because I was just talking about that with some of my students today. I've always been fascinated with the ego thing in advertising because, here we are creating something that a lot of people, maybe even most people, if they had their choice, would just as soon avoid. So, we're not saving lives. We're not, we're not conquering cancer. We're not launching people into space. We're not doing any of those things. And yet some of the biggest egos I've ever encountered exist in advertising. And I always think to myself, why? What is there to be so egotistical about? I mean, yes, we do something that most people see as fluff, and yet it's actually a very difficult thing to succeed in. It's hard to do it well, and there are so many challenges, and there are so many little pieces that are involved in making the whole machine run. And when it does, it's a miracle. And that's something to be proud of, and we all work very hard to make that happen. But the truth is, I used to say we're just selling stuff, but we're doing more than that, of course. But at the end of it all, it's all about commerce, and so
it's about branding, right? So advertising for me, it's like people confuse what branding is, and branding and advertising. Well, advertising and marketing and advertising, right? They're kind of different, and when you have to create that asset for the advertising to reflect the brand's image, the culture of the brand, that's where the creative work comes in, right? And how do you continue to do that time and time and time again?
Yep, absolutely. It's challenging, and a lot of it just comes down to learning how to refresh your creative self. And there are techniques to that. And we talked earlier about flow and what that involves and how you achieve that and getting into that. And flow is that amazing state that you don't have to be creative to get into it. In fact, it's really interesting because there's actually science behind it. Flow is that state, we've all experienced it at one time or another, where you're working on something and you look at the clock and you realize that 5 hours have passed and you hadn't even noticed. You haven't stopped to eat, you haven't gotten the phone, you haven't talked to anybody, you've just been working hard, and that's when you're in a flow state, when you know that. It's kind of miraculous when it happens. It's such a wonderful feeling, and it turns out that the flow state occurs when you are working on something that is challenging, but not so challenging that it's frustrating. So it's you're working on something where you're reasonably comfortable with what you're doing, but it still makes you engages you, makes you think, engages your higher thinking processes and all that stuff. But it's not so frustrating that you throw your hands down and walk away from your work in disgust. It's like that sweet spot in between boredom and being overwhelmed. And when you get in there, it's magic.
I agree. It's like, it's when you're not in the mojo, when you're not in the flow, right? It's like, you really feel it. But then when you're in it, it's like you get lost. You're lost in it. And, I can work until 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes if I'm really creating stuff and I'm so happy and it's really working. And then other times I'm like, is it time to go to bed yet? I just want to go to bed.
Please let me go to bed, please.
Nothing's happening here, right?
For sure.
But let me ask you this, because I'd like to. I think the reason that I'm so interested in talking about the subject of the startups is because I come from direct response, as you know. I come from the infomercial world, and then into short form, and then building my agency and all of that, and managing campaigns. And so with that, I was so involved for so many years with all of the memberships, the subscriptions, the auto ships, all of this stuff, right? This is how you made money with infomercials. You didn't make money because you sold somebody an oven, or you sold somebody Proactive. You made money because you signed them up for a subscription, and brought value, and you gave them good deals, and you shipped something to them, the vitamin companies, you name it. Sonicare toothbrush, they relied on their refills of their toothbrushes, right? The back end, the upsells, all of that came on the other side of it. And that to me is where I get very confused when I started to really learn why 90% of startups fail. because they don't go after their first dollar, right? They don't know where their consumer is. And so they get their seed money and they have all this money, and I understand that they think they have to hire 5 developers that cost $200,000 a year and blah, blah, blah. That's the mentality. But they do that prior to even understanding how they're going to make any money. And when I researched it, Arthur, it's so much exactly like what we did 30 years ago in developing standards and developing best practices for memberships and to protect the consumer and disclaimers and how all of that worked. And then they started to just call it SaaS. If you get seed money of $1 million and you can't make anything, and you forget about advertising and marketing, I'm not getting that. And that's typically what does happen. 90% of startups do go out of business because 54% attribute it to the lack of knowledge of advertising and marketing and how to get their first dollar.
Way back at the very beginning, and the question that no one ever seems to ask themselves is, who are we talking to and what do they want?
Right.
And is what I have here something that anybody wants? What founders, I find, often make the error of thinking is, and especially in the tech end of things where a lot of founders are tech people, they're coders or, they're designers or inventors, whatever it is, it doesn't occur to them that what they think is brilliant may actually not be interesting to anybody. A perfect example of that would be the, what was that device? I can't think of the name of it now. That had 2 wheels and you could sort of wheel around on it. Paul Blart Mall Cop. Anyway,
yeah, I know exactly what. I know.
I'm spacing the name of it. Yeah.
The thing.
Yeah, the thing. Anyway,
everybody knows what you're talking about.
Sure.
Terrible branding because we can't remember the name.
Exactly. But what's interesting about that is, that guy, I think his name is Cayman. Is that right? Cayman, maybe. Anyway, he worked on that, designing that thing and, making it wonderful and do all the things it could do. And, so this is the future of transportation. Segway, yeah. Very good. You did it. You got there first. You win.
Thanks, Joy. Joy in the audience gave me that hint.
Thank you, Joy. So he went through all this whole process of, inventing it, developing it, and doing this whole thing. It never occurred to him to find out if anybody actually wanted one, and it turned out they didn't. So this world-shaking device that, he spent so much time and money and effort developing turned out to be, this kind of peripheral thing. Like living in San Francisco, it's obviously a big tourist city, so, they have Segway tours. That's what you see, and
weren't they hard to drive or something? They were dangerous.
I've never been on one. I don't know, but the point is, he thought this was a world changing thing, but he never bothered to ask anybody.
To me, it's so ass backwards. It's like, why would you build something, spend millions of dollars to build it just because you can, and not know, and then iterate fast, fail fast, right? Iterate, and then realize, we don't have anything here, and then walk away from it. Now, that is my correlation, like I told you in the green room, about the commercial. Where's the beef, right? Big giant bun of fluff, a little tiny patty of meat, and everybody's saying, well, where's the meat? Where's the beef? And I didn't even know I geniusly named this show that until I watched the commercial.
Take credit. It's all good.
Thank you. Think about that. That is exactly what is happening. All this money comes flooding in to the young and spirited. And then they go, oh, we have to get a customer. And that's when I realized, oh my God, you don't even realize that you have to build. It's like, and then let's take that one step further. Why wouldn't they hire me, someone with 27 years in that space, to come in and consult with them on that? Why? Answer that question, Arthur. You know why.
I do. And, it's because they don't, we're old.
We're old.
We're old. Yeah, we're old.
We're old. What do we know?
Well, I'll tell you something really interesting because I was doing some research on this for a different project, and 2 interesting things came up. For a lot of startups, one of the secrets to success, and this is, this won't surprise you at all, but one of the secrets to success is having a woman on the board, at least one, hopefully more. Just that the simple fact of having a woman on the board, or several women on the board, made the difference in, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but made the difference between success and failure, increase the likelihood of success in any given startup. The other thing was somebody over 50. Those two features. The fact that people have A, knowledge and experience, B, perspective that one gets simply by dint of being female and the experience that comes with that, both contribute dramatically to the success of startups. And yet you look at the boards of startups and you very rarely see either of those things, which is astonishing.
It's true. It's very true. And age is but here's the thing. I get age. Okay. I get that young people are progressive and they're cool and they're hip and listen to the language I'm using. And all that good stuff. I have a 30-year-old that is like killing it as an artist.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have a 40-year-old that is in the wine and cruise business. And so it's like, I know, I get it. But I don't see myself at 66 years old, and God forbid I should tell anybody that in the creative world, because, I'm here in Silicon Beach. I have watched people I have worked with for years. There's so many agencies around here. Deutsch shut down not too long ago because of the pandemic. They shut a huge building down because I think the ad agencies and creative spaces are hurting also. It's all just me assuming this stuff, but that because tech has all the money is going over there. The money is being flushed down the toilet while people are so of age, of wisdom, of skills. Wow. This goes all the way from DPs, photographers,
Sure.
right? Writers, directors, you name it. The trickle-down effect is horrible.
It is. And honestly, because I've actually been very interested in this subject about agencies in particular, once upon a time, having an advertising agency was a license to print money. And, back in the heyday in the 50s and 60s, the days of original DDB and George Lois and, all those really interesting people who kind of reinvented advertising in the 60s after the white shoe advertising of the 50s and 40s and before that. It's the Mad Men years. And, that's why, it's, even during my career, it was still licensed, but when I used to work at an agency that had a leather floor, and which, I don't know if you know anything about leather floors, but they're impossible to maintain. They get stained really easy, that kind of thing, but they went ahead and got one, it's like crazy. So just squandering money on all kinds of random stuff. Well, now, a lot of the reason that people get, leave advertising or cause to leave advertising at the age of 39 is because of the anti-ageism law that says that if they fire you without any particular cause, after 40, you can sue. So better to get rid of everybody before they turn 40, and that becomes an issue.
Oh my God, I never heard of that. Where'd that come from? I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I didn't realize it until relatively
Is that like an
recently
unwritten? Is that like an unwritten thing, Arthur?
No. That's a law. After 40, you can sue for ageism, but it's really hard to prove. By the same token, everyone, if you look at any kind of job listing, they'll say things like, we are we don't discriminate against sex or national origin or color or, whatever. But the truth is that, they say all that stuff, but you can apply and they go, well, you're not our kind of person, and what does that mean? You're not young, you're not white, whatever your kind of person is. But, it's like, you're not really going to fit in with our culture around here.
A cultural fit. They call it a cultural fit.
Which is bullshit for saying, we don't want whatever you happen to be. You're too old or.
Yeah, it's the cultural fit. So, but here's what happens. So, it feels as though it happens overnight. It's like one day you're in demand and then all of a sudden something shifts. And I felt that shift at around 60. I was still very busy and everything, but I started to feel this interesting shift, which spawned my other podcast about, remarkable people over 50, because I knew a lot of remarkable people over 50. So I wanted to interview them. And then they all started to talk about the same thing. And I started to realize it's not me living in a bubble. I am not the only person that is suffering from this thing called ageism that I had not even thought about ever. And then it dawned on me, wow, look at this problem, and especially in the creative space. I want to read this list that comes off of your website. It says here, for many of us, our work is who we are. It is easy to feel lost if it isn't going well. Then you say, over the course of your career, you've worked with every kind of creative person you can imagine. Filmmakers, photographers, writers, actors, designers, artists, illustrators, musicians, producers, choreographers, dancers, singers, puppeteers, video effects artists, and so many more. That is just a small list of the people that are affected by today's culture, tech culture, and all that money that's there going to waste by not embracing these slew of people that can actually really bring it together and make, I'm certain of it, make more success for, and would not waste so much money.
It's funny. I'll tell you an interesting story about that. It fascinates me because for a brief time, I was the executive creative director at the Money Store. I don't know if you remember the Money Store, but the Money Store was, so that was a little sideline of my career that was mercifully brief, but I learned a lot doing it. And what I learned a lot about was this whole founder effect thing, which is when people start a company and it becomes successful, they believe that all the success is because of them and their genius, and that as a result of that, they are good at everything. Not just the one thing they were successful at, but because they're good at that thing, therefore they're good at everything. So I was the executive creative director there, and at the time they were using Jim Palmer as their spokesperson, and he won the I think he won the Cy Young Award. Baseball player won the Cy Young Award and was a winning pitcher in the World Series. I can't remember which teams or whatever, but anyway. So he became their spokesperson, and when they asked me to come and join them, they said, we want to get rid of Jim Palmer, we want to up our game and do this whole thing. So I said, okay. And so I went over and I started working for them, and I put together a team, and the founder came in and said, I changed my mind, we're going to do Jim Palmer. It's like, oh God, that's exactly what I didn't want to have happen. So, but we were there and we'd signed a contract and they were paying us a lot of money. So we said, okay, let's do the best possible thing we can with Jim Palmer. And we did. We turned Jim, we actually broke all their previous records because they were all direct response. So everything was call volume and
you got that gig, not me. Not me, huh, Arthur? You're the one.
I'm the one who took it away from you. That's right. Believe me, you're better off without it. But anyway,
probably.
But it was always fascinating to me because the CEO, the founder, was convinced that he knew everything there was to know about everything, and there was no disabusing of that notion. And that happens a lot, I've noticed, with tech companies as well. So tech companies, some guy who's a coder or whatever comes up with an idea and manages to convince some people, whatever you call them.
On Clubhouse, in a VC pitch meeting. No,
VC, yeah. Yes, VC pitch, a venture capitalist. So they, get a few $1 million from that, seed money, get started. And maybe they get some attention, get some more money, and keep this thing kind of going along. But the problem is they're so convinced of the brilliance of their idea that they forget that most people don't care about their idea. It's like,
well, that's why 1 in 30 fail. So the unicorn thing comes from, they understand infomercials were the same way, Arthur. 90% failed. So that means that all you got to really do is find that 1 in 30 that's really going to make it. And that turns into the unicorn and makes up for all the other losses. Right. That was the mentality of the infomercial world back in the day, but opposite. Yep. 90% failed, but we spent as little as we possibly could by finding products that everybody would want and then testing them in direct response and doing that with, cheap media and then growing the brand that way intelligently. It's like a complete opposite, but using the same formula.
Right. Well, it's smart because you can do exactly that whole iteration thing. So you try and, see what happens, and you make adjustments, and
that's what we did in direct response.
Again. Right, exactly. But that's what's so wonderful about direct response. And that's what has happened, with the internet now, because you get immediate response. You might get it on Twitter, or you might get it, Instagram or some other way, but, people will talk back. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't listen. Which is astonishing. It's like the whole world wants to tell you if your product is good or if it sucks, or, if your company is good or it sucks or whatever else. And people just don't want to listen to that. It fascinates me because
money is easy. I'm going to be honest with you, Arthur, why. I've been researching this a lot because it really bothers me.
Yeah.
There's so much money that goes to waste, and there's so many people hurting that could be having jobs that could help those people that are throwing money in the toilet because they feel as though they have a great idea and it doesn't take anything other than a bunch of people getting paid a lot of money. Now, granted, there are some amazing health tech companies and lots of things happening in the tech. I love tech for that. I just wish that they would open up their just their minds and hearts to understand that you're young and you could be a little dumb, I'm sorry, in this space, because it's obvious that if 54% of that 90% of startups that are failing and wasting all those hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars is because of the lack of knowledge of advertising and marketing and bringing in your first customer, or lack of understanding that there is a customer, then that is wrong. And that's just wrong in my book.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what you just said, understanding that there is a customer, and understanding who that person is.
You're a tech company. You should be able to go find them pretty darn easy.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's like, I think the mistake a lot of people make is they try and talk to everybody. And I think you and I both know better than anybody, you cannot speak to everybody. Everybody, first of all, is not going to be receptive to your message. So, the first thing you need to understand is, who the hell am I talking to? Who's actually going to derive benefit from this thing that I just made, whatever it is. They don't.
With you.
And they don't care about. As people obsess. I've worked on so many tech products where the people obsess about features. It does this and it has this many of that, and the power of this and that and the other thing. It's like, okay, all that's fine, but what does it do for me? What's my benefit?
Right. Does it make your life easier? Right.
Yeah.
Does it change your life? The 3 rules of direct response, everyone, and everything is direct response.
Yes,
that's when a consumer takes a direct action from any type of marketing or advertising. It's called direct response.
Yep.
They call it whatever they want to call it today to make it cool. But at the same time, this is the trouble. The problem is SaaSes are great, right? They're great. They're software as a service. I've seen many become very, very successful.
Sure.
But if you want to do a software as a service, and that's creating a membership, you have to understand churn rate, right? You have to understand, what are you going to give that as a value? Oh, well, it'll be a membership, but they'll pay money because they want to be on this platform. No, they won't.
No.
You actually, you need to give it to them for free so they will be on the platform. And then maybe someday, like Facebook did, transition to making, money through through advertising. And because Facebook is still free, but it's not really free when you think about it.
No. It's not free at all. And that
you're selling your soul to that guy.
Yes. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. There's no free. There's no free, and unfortunately, we all have to make a decision for ourselves if, recognize what they are extracting from us, and to decide if, you're willing to pay that for the benefit of using whatever the, any particular platform is. Sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes you got to ask yourself, is it or not? So
I want to ask them, what is your value? What are you bringing to people and that they can't get anywhere else? It has to be something that they can't get anywhere else. And are you thinking this few? Are you doing future casting? Do you know what the lifetime value of the customer has to be in order for you to be sustainable? Well, how do I figure that out if I don't have a customer? Well, we got to get a customer.
yes.
Right? It's this thing where, well, let me just build this platform and spend so much time and money. And so here I am going, okay, well, now if you're shifting to a box, right? So all of a sudden they shift to, well, I'm going to send a monthly box out. Okay, how are you going to do that? Is it drop shipping? Now they're not thinking about the back end. The back end of what does it take? What is the shipping cost? What is the box? What's in the box? Where is it coming from? Oh, I'll just drop ship it. Oh, really? Do you know that you can't really do that? If you have 3 things in a box, you got to bundle it. There's no understanding of the execution of the idea.
And, the thing that's so annoying about so much of that is that it's all right there to be found. No one's hiding it. It's like, it's not that hard to figure this stuff out. It's just that people get wrapped up into their own thing and completely forget that, the whole rest of the world is out.
No, it's because it's easy money. I can tell you, it's easy money. Everybody wants to be a founder of a tech company that changes the world. And that's what it is. And it's acceptable to all of this money that's out there for them to fail fast. They encourage it. And I understand that mentality. Fail fast so we don't give you your major round and then fail. But anyway, it's just we failed all the time in infomercials and direct response. That's the nature of that business, right? Pull it if the media is not working. Pull the media. Pull this. Pull that. Shift, pivot, do this. Change the pricing. Change the offer. Give it away for free. Let's do a lead gen. All of these stuff. Let's put it in this box. And oh God, everything that a tech that has a subscription agreement or a membership attached to it they should be tapping into every veteran of direct response that is still alive. Like you and I, from those creative aspect plus understanding that, direct response consumer methodology. That's how I feel.
Well, it's interesting you're saying that, and I'm just putting it together in my head. The whole idea that founders actually don't need their companies to succeed for them personally to make tons of money.
Exactly.
So they're basically rewarded for failing, because, and the culture of Silicon Valley and other similar places is they look at your resume and you've got 10 failures on it. You've got experience, so give him more money. Eventually he's going to hit. Or she, but mostly it's he, unfortunately. I don't know that rewarding failure to that degree is necessarily a productive use of money. Just like, I do understand it to some degree, but on the other hand, there's a lot of people that don't do anything except fail.
Yes, and you brought up a great point. I do understand it. I understand it. Cultures evolve, and this is what the culture is right now. And in 10 years, 15 years, it'll be different. But my point is really, why not learn from each other? Why not work together in order to build something really beautiful, as opposed to, shutting people out. I mean, you did Max Headroom for Coke. I mean, come on, author. It's just ridiculous. There are certain things that, they probably have seen all of those commercials and sat there at one point and said, oh my God, that was awesome. Oh my God, that's an awesome commercial. Oh, that's so old school. That's so cool. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. And never gave one thought to who created it, who had the idea, who schlepped the shit to actually make that commercial, and everything that went into it. All they see is that's cool.
Yep.
That's cool. And so that work ethic, I don't believe exists in that creative space. The disconnect happens, and that's part of the failure rate, I believe.
Probably. I mean, there's so many things that seem to go into it these days, but, it definitely feels...
I would like to know, Arthur, what was it like? How did you come up with the idea for Max Headroom for Coke?
Desperation. It was, if you remember, that was during the era of the reformulation of Coca-Cola, where they changed the formula and everyone freaked out. It was amazing because people were more upset about
Coke, right?
Yeah, they came up
Was
with
that the new
Coke.
Coke? Yeah.
Yeah, and there were people were having demonstrations and boycotting Coca-Cola until they brought back the old formula and blah 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 blah. So they finally brought back the old formula, but they decided they wanted to have make New Coke be what they called a predator brand, which meant that because if you go back and you look at the advertising at the time, it was obviously the so-called cola wars between Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Pepsi was coming out directly against Coca-Cola. They would mention Coca-Cola, and they would show all these ads about how Pepsi winning in various different ways. Coca-Cola never spoke about Pepsi ever, but they decided that the function of New Coke would be to act as what they called a predator brand, which meant that they could duke it out directly with Pepsi, while Coca-Cola Classic kind of floated above the trenches, untouched by not soiling themselves by mentioning the other brand. So anyway, so we were trying to think how we could do that and failing. And all of a sudden, somebody had so Max Headroom was actually a show in England at the time. It was he was a video jockey, so-called, so kind of like MTV, except in England. And there was a sort of introductory movie they made about where he came from, his origin story. Someone brought that in on a videotape, and we watched it, and we said, "That's the guy." And we put together a whole package of commercials and sold it to Coke. They loved it, and we went and produced it. Ridley Scott shot a bunch of commercials for us, and some other people as well. And the rest is history. But it was literally pure chance that somebody would happen to have that video tape, and they just said, "Oh, here's a cool thing to look at." It wasn't in reference to Coke or anything. It was just, here it is. So. Yeah,
that's called serendipity, or that's called the universe.
Yeah, exactly.
Answering your prayer.
Exactly.
So Lily has joined us. I love that story. You've told me that before, and I love when you recite it. Lily has joined us. Lily, would you like to come off of your monkey and ask us anything?
Oh, sure. Hi. Well, I think you guys are great people to ask about this. I was actually coming in late because I was at the press club on another app, because they were doing just a live, unrecorded session, but discussing smart glasses. And today, Facebook made available the Ray-Ban Stories glasses. And there were tech people discussing, Google Glass, which I had the first edition, and Snap spectacles. And I'm not quite on board with these. But do you guys have any input here? Oh, and just with failure, they were talking about Google with the Google Glass, with the failings there. And they kind of had to launch the Alphabet, the corporate division, just all the money they were going through with that. So I just thought of that. And with your guys, any feedback? I'm curious on the branding aspect, and any thoughts with this new product?
I don't know anything about that. I'm going to have to look that up. Lily, you're always so great with all of this new stuff, because her name is actually Lily Beta Tester.
That's a very 21st century name. Yeah.
But Arthur, do you have any? I'd like to research that, because the first thing that comes to mind is, how would I actually create what would be an idea for a Ray-Ban? So it's a Ray-Ban, like a Google Glass, but it's from Facebook. Is that what you're saying now?
Yes. And it's more, the branding's more staying with Luxottica and Ray-Ban. But it's a Facebook product, the smart glasses. And, you can even, I think, listen to podcasts with them. It's just news is out really today about it.
Oh, interesting. So they're getting into the real wearables is a really interesting space. Yeah. And doing creative for wearables. I have, I've talked about this in another show where I have this whole thing. So anyway, I'm not going to go there. I am going, because I'll take up too much of my guest's time. I think it's a great question. Arthur? Could you chime in there?
Sure. It's interesting because I just read about that this morning, so that's brand new and very interesting. I'm sort of watching this whole space with fascination because Google totally bombed out with that whole thing, and I think I don't know if you remember that, but people were calling people that wore those glass holes. And because I think a lot of people
God, that's so funny. Sorry, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was the thing. And I think people felt like they were invading their space. There was one kind of viral video that was going around for a while where it's seen through the eyes of somebody who's wearing the glasses. And he's talking to a woman at the bar, and while he's doing that, he's actually researching her. He's Googling her, he's looking her up, he's finding out, he's being like totally creeping. And I think that ended up being the way people saw those glasses as, just a way for people to creep. And, that killed them like immediately. It's interesting because you can still get, as far as I know, you can still get Google glasses, but I think they're used primarily in various different professional functions. Like I think they use in the medical field and probably in some engineering things. And they have sort of AR features as well. I think I don't know that much about them, but
yeah, I'm sure they're probably going, because wearables are very much into the AI and voice space and smart speaker thing. And
it's interesting. Apple just sent out their new invitation for the 14th September. They're going to be showing all their new products, and the invitation. If you tap on the Apple in the invitation, it actually starts up an AR program. So it floats the Apple in the middle of whatever scene you're in. So you look through your phone camera, and you're seeing, if you're sitting in your kitchen, you see your kitchen and the apple's floating there, and you can move it around with your finger, so you can move it closer or further. And as you move the camera around, you see that it looks as though it's floating in your kitchen, but obviously it's not. So I think the whole AR...
Does it end up in a video, or does it end up in a still image? Is that the idea?
No, it's just a thing. It's just a cute, AR type thing.
Yeah.
And I think that, Apple is highly committed to AR right now. Augmented reality, for those who don't know what that is, which means that unlike virtual reality, which involves complete immersion in whatever scene you happen to be involved with, AR is a way of floating the virtual world in the real world. So, the glasses are a great way to realize AR, and Apple is really working hard to be at the forefront of all that. So I'm really curious to know, because I don't know the details yet about these new glasses from Facebook and Ray-Ban, but...
what I think is interesting is the move that they made with the cross-promotion of using Ray-Ban, and here's why. Because they want they want a built-in audience that's going to buy the glasses, and you don't buy glasses that are made by Google or whatever, because glasses aren't, they're a complement to your face, or should be, and usually are. And so by teaming with Ray-Ban, they kind of probably got over that hurdle of consumer, acceptance, because you're probably just going to use all those Ray-Ban styles that people already like.
We'll see. I mean, I'm sure that's exactly why they did it. Whether that works or not remains to be seen. I'm very curious, because I just feel like the whole glasses thing is super, super touchy, because it does have that capability of being creepy. If I was going to do advertising or promotion of any kind for those, I would think very deeply about how to decreep them.
You mean you wouldn't play a video, you wouldn't play a commercial as somebody was driving down the street out on the corner of their eye on the glasses? Yeah, you wouldn't do that? Why not?
So,
gosh, that's like, but you have to admit, it's like, we never really thought we would be watching a video on a small little, phone either. It will eventually get there. I can see that a wearable like that being something that would be great for certain people, that maybe needed to have that connection or whatever, and that's kind of what wraps it all up here is just because you can, does it really mean you should when it comes to, creating anything. And Arthur, I think I've taken probably just enough of your time for today. I know how busy you are creating stuff.
It's
right?
been a busy week. Yes,
So,
it has.
And I want to thank everybody for being here. So you can visit and learn more about Arthur Vibert. You can find him on LinkedIn. He's quite active there. But I do want to thank you for taking the time, and it's arthurvibert.com, and you do creative coaching, so you can reach out and schedule a call with Arthur at any time, I'm sure. Do you have any final words, Arthur, that you would like to say?
Just that, as always, it's a real pleasure to talk to you, Wendy, and we always have interesting discussions. You always manage to find great topics, and I always enjoy it. So thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. And everyone listening, you can find the interview I did with Arthur on The Wendy Cooper Show. It is now called The Wendy Cooper Show Story Views, and it is everywhere you get your podcast. There are some amazing interviews and stories there of remarkable people over 50, and I do hope you check that out. Arthur, thank you so much for being here, and thank you everyone in the audience. I hope you all stay healthy and stay safe and keep listening. This is a pickup to remind everyone that the music is by Orsi Digital Post, Tom Orsi. You can find everything about me at wendycooper.com. It's Wendy with an I. It is C Spot Run, the letter C, spotrun.com. Also, all of my podcasts are there, my other podcast. I want to thank Fallon Fatemi and Mark Cuban for allowing me to be a creator here on Fireside. And I hope you join me every week, usually on Thursdays, for Where's the Beef? Tech versus Creative. Advertising, marketing, technology, and culture. Thanks for listening, everyone. Please stay safe and stay healthy.